Hello and welcome to the Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. I'm your host, Dr. David Hardy. And today on our show, we've got another amazing guest. He is a keynote speaker, facilitator, and a team building expert. Welcome to the show, Jason Maraschiello. How are you doing today?
Yeah, thank you. I'm super excited. I love that intro with actually you include the athletic and the physical component into performance, which is awesome.
It's needed, and we're going to dive into that in a bit. But for people that don't know you, uh, you're helping a lot of businesses, entrepreneurs out. But you also went through a bit of a burnout yourself, did you not?
I did. It's kind of, the origin stories, right? And
Right.
you get to meet a lot of people like you or myself who are passionate about going out there, helping others. And you generally can trace that back to a point where you were not practicing the thing that you preach today. And that was what happened with me. I lost track of taking care of myself. I was, chasing something that was so far in the distance. It was so blurry. I didn't even know what it was I was chasing. And that,
Right.
yes, led to my burnout.
What was that burnout experience? What happened to you kind of physically and mentally at that moment in time that you were
Well, it's
like,
funny that
okay,
you
I'm
asked.
burnt out?
Yeah, well, this is the thing, right? You don't get to a moment where you're just like, oh, here it is. This is what burnout is. And this is funny when I talk to older people now, and I'm older now. I was in my 20s when this happened. And I
Wow,
often
early on.
compared, I know, right? I often compared Friday to Monday. And I would feel tired at the end of a work week, but my dad, he really drilled work ethics into us. He owned a construction company. So in my mind, that's what it felt like. At the end of a work week, you were supposed to feel tired. That means you did a good job at your work. But what I
Right.
wasn't doing, I wasn't comparing, say, this Monday to last Monday to the Monday before. I would feel like, okay, I feel better than I did Friday. That means I rejuvenated and restored myself to some degree over the weekend. So I must be doing okay. But if I zoom out and looked at a graph of where I was as far as how rested I felt, how at the time I was a Muay Thai fighter too. So even tracking my physical performance, when you talk about athleticism, I can also track how that decreased as well. I was losing my sense of humor. I wasn't going out with my friends as much. When there was the option to go do things on the weekend, I would just want to stay in bed, even though I wasn't sleeping well. And that was when it finally came to the point where I saw a close friend that I hadn't seen in a while. And she had moved out to BC, and we got together, and she's like, I don't know who you are anymore. And that's
Wow.
when it hits you, right?
Yeah. And did you kind of just slug it off at first, or were you like, "Whoa, she's onto something. I I feel like shit. She's telling me it."
Well, I realized I was in denial, right? I realized that I
Ah,
knew it
yes.
for some
Hmm.
time at some level. And when I look back to, I consider myself a playful person. I'm quite jovial. And I look back, I'm
Yeah.
like, I was pretty short with my colleagues over the last, oh crap, has that been months? And then that's when it dawns on you. So yeah, sometimes it takes someone who's close enough that can be like honest with you, which is something now I really advocate for people to be an honest relationship with each other that also hasn't necessarily seen you in the last couple of weeks or something to really get that difference. And in my mind, I was like, oh, I'm just getting older. I was like 25 years old. This is what happens when you're getting older. Things ache, you sleep more. And now I talk to people in their like 50s and they just shake their head.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and I when you said that, I'm like, yeah, I like there was such a thing as a quarter life crisis back back in my life anyways, or somewhere in there, and it's like that is so long ago now. Like that time has just passed. And
Yeah.
yeah, but it is happening younger and younger. People realize that, oh geez, like what is this life I'm living, and is it serving me? Am I having fun, and am I getting anywhere?
Yeah. And you talk about the crises. I think that's very poignant and something when I work with clients, it will sometimes come up, right? Because we see anytime from, so again, I come from more of an Eastern philosophy before I switched over into studying psychology, social work, and all of those fun things we can get into later.
Right.
But in a Buddhist background, we talk a lot about attachment.
Hmm.
And when I think of what it means to be through the quarter life, the midlife, and the three-quarter life crisis, the way that I blend what I learned in the Eastern philosophy side of things with the more Western mentality is it is when we are in a challenge of our identity, essentially. So going in from that quarter life where I am figuring out what it means to be an adult, that whole like, what am I going to do for the rest of my life? Like, what does it
Right.
mean to step into that mantle of independence, true independence? And up until that point, we're so conditioned to believe our definitions of success to be what we were taught. Like my dad, you
Right.
definitely need to
Yeah.
feel like you worked a strong work week at the end of it. You want to feel tired. That's good. And I never stopped and asked myself, like, what did I actually want out of this lived experience?
Yeah, absolutely. And there's a difference too from a physical tired that you would get, say, construction wise, to sitting at a desk and going through the corporate grind. Like a physical tired at the end of a labor work week is, yeah, you do have that accomplishment. You know you're going to rest and the body's going to heal up and be stronger.
Hmm.
But yeah, that corporate kind of stress, or yeah, even in a business role, leadership role, that stress is a different fatigue,
Mm.
and it doesn't make you stronger. It makes you weaker, and
Yeah,
you
and
feel it.
I get like a visceral feeling thinking about it
Right.
right now, right? Being over your computer, your knees bouncing, you're feeling like, oh my goodness, no matter what I do, there's just not enough hours in the workday. And you feel that build. Your shoulders slowly start to creep up and you're just hunched over. Whew, I need to take a breath just thinking about it.
Right. Yeah. It's a feeling of weakness. Like, as a chiropractor, I see people come in all the time, and the ones that look more run down and are feeling more chronic issues are the ones where it's sitting in a sedentary, stressful situation that the body's just aching.
Mm-hmm.
Versus somebody who, yeah, maybe strained themselves or bounced around too much
Mm-hmm.
on the work site. It's a different state, that's for sure. And wow, to kind of be able to realize this and to to move forward. So you're in this position, your friend told you and kind of verbally slapped you across the face like, Jason, wake up, take care of
Mm-hmm.
yourself. Uh, you're not the person I recognize anymore. What happened next?
Well, I think I've always despised hypocrisy. So as soon as she was like, "Wake up," I was like, "Oh man," because I started my like mindfulness meditation journey when I was like 10 years old. So that was
Wow.
always something that was back there in the back of my mind, and yet defense mechanisms and denial are very, very powerful. And I told myself, this is just for a short while. I'll overcome it. So when she said that, it was like, okay, something drastic needs to happen. I don't want to be behind a desk. When I was a kid, I wanted to be an actor or I wanted to be a professional musician. I actually had my audition piece with the trumpet ready to go for U of T when my dad was like, no, get into architecture. And so that was
Ah,
like, okay, dad, I'll do it. So when this came, I was ready to just reject the corporate world, reject the Western world. And that's kind of what I did. I sold all of my possessions and I left Canada. I spent a little bit of time recuperating in Hawaii. That's part of the story I don't always tell, but I needed that. I needed to have
you
a
do.
little bit of just luxury before I put myself on the grind. And then I spent a year in Australia. I kind of backpacked around. I worked on different farms. Eventually, I got connected with the indigenous people in Australia through a serendipitous meeting I had with a ranger who worked up in the very northern part of Australia, where it's still like very raw there. And I got
Right.
to spend time with the indigenous people, learning how they live their life, about their culture. And it was so different. It was just so different. Imagine being nomadic, where everything that you own, you carry on your back. The idea of greed and like hoarding excess goes completely out the window, because then it is literally a burden to carry your excess, where we have in a way sneakily found that we can hide our excess in our bank accounts, and it doesn't weigh anything. And then it creates a different
Yes,
kind of scarcity mindset.
absolutely. Wow. And how long did you stay in this situation for? And like, did you kind of wake up one day and say, this has been a good experience, but I don't want to live the rest of my life this way? Or
Yeah.
what kind of conflicting thoughts came through your mind at that moment?
There was something that was really beautiful about not having any source or sense of time. I didn't have any bills
Yes.
coming out at the end of the month. I didn't have anything that was keeping me on like the days of the week, anything like that. But there are some of those things, right? For me, it was a little bit of homesickness. I had friends, I had family. There's people that I just grew up with that I missed. So that would get me moving, but it didn't always get me moving home. It would get me looking for something else. So after Australia, I went to Thailand. I studied and went deeper into my Buddhist practice in Thailand, spent time there. I went to India, where I lived on an ashram for a period of time, studied yoga in India. I went and learned how to free dive in Indonesia. I climbed mountains in New Zealand. Eventually, I landed in Nepal, where I was living in like the Annapurna circuit in the Himalayan mountains. And that's when I had a moment where I was like, okay, I'm watching this sunrise over the Himalayan mountains. Beautiful. I'd watched it for the last few mornings. And there was these other people that had lived their entire lives there. And they're looking at the sunrise with the same awe and admiration as I was, just being like a stranger to it. And there was a moment where seeing that, I was like, oh man, I don't know how it pieced together, but I realized I was running from my problems, essentially. I told myself I was on this great spiritual journey of learning people. And really, I was convincing myself I wasn't afraid of snakes anymore by moving to a country with no snakes, if I may use a metaphor. And something told me that I just had to kind of come back to North America and face the things that I ran away from. And so that's
So,
what
what were
brought me
these
back.
metaphorical snakes in North America that you had to
You know,
face?
you're asking poignant questions here. A lot of it was I was just not good at setting boundaries. I can blame the work
uh,
environment. I can
I was
say,
thinking that earlier. I'm like, if Jason wasn't a great speaker right now, I'd interrupt and ask, okay, during this journey, did you get away from the pressure of your dad telling you what you need to do for your career in life?
well, so there was two things happening simultaneously. There was doubting my own choices. So, again, I
Yes.
can't blame my dad. He gave me an answer.
No.
I was scared. I was confused. I was, 19 years old. And he gave me an answer. So angry inside, in the back of my mind, angry 10-year-old Jason could probably have blamed my dad. But I wasn't confident enough to make my own decisions. So there was that piece. When I was in the workplace, I wasn't confident enough to stand up for myself and say, no, I'm not going to work 80 hours this week. And it's not my responsibility to make up for what this person's not doing and what this person's not doing. And when I really sat back, because that's what you do, right? Like at one point in my life on this journey, I was meditating for up to 8 hours a day. You
Wow.
sit with yourself, you sit with your
Yes.
mind. And that's what slowly started coming in. It's like, okay, who are all these people? My dad, my bosses, who are all these people that I blamed for my troubles without actually looking in on how I was contributing to them? And that's what made me realize I need to come back and face those things.
All right. So when you came back, were you like just uh, boundary, boundary, boundary? Like, did you go to the extreme on that? It's like, did you start to, oh, I'm going to face up this problem? Like, were you in that state, or were you still kind of a little in the Buddhist meditative state as well? Like, where were you at?
That's a good question. I'd say I was passively aggressively passive aggressively in that push away state, but I was, I presented very zen. I was very calm. I eventually, I opened up a wellness center, opened up a yoga studio, and that's what actually started my keynote speaking. As I wanted to That was my way of trying to get back and push against the corporate world. And my
Right.
first few keynote speaking engagements were with students, so I kind of got away with it. And I was just like, don't do it, kids. Don't go work those corporate jobs. It's not worth it. Not to that full extent, but I very quickly realized corporations didn't want to hire me to give that talk.
Right.
Mhm. So again, it was a journey. I didn't realize all of the ways that I was responsible for things right away. I was a little angry when I came back. There was culture shock when I came back. I was angry
Oh,
about,
massively. I always say
right?
the reverse culture shock is way worse than the culture shock you get when you're stepping out.
Yes. Like I
Yeah.
was at a place in Nepal, some of the poorest people. There's a lot
Right.
of hunger there. And when I came back, I was actually invited to go to Orlando. My father-in-law at the time was playing. He was a musician. He was playing at Epcot, and so we went to Disney like months after coming back from living in India and Nepal, and to see just even the portions, the sizes of the food that they give there, and all the waste. And I got depressed. I'll be honest, I got quite
Right.
depressed coming back. Mhm.
Yeah. And then you kind of channeled that through your wellness program. Uh, did part of that come from when you first started to kind of heal after your experience?
Yeah. So first it was okay. I'm going to try to heal myself by trying to heal others. And again, it took a while to even realize that's what I was doing. But I came back because I did have my own mental health struggles. So I got trained in suicide intervention work. I started offering free meditation classes out of my studio for people in the community. I got involved with the local police station where I was, worked with firefighters, and I was just trying to help people identify the signs of burnout and find some tools to help them when they were experiencing it so that they didn't hopefully get to the place that I got to. And
Wow.
it was a real journey really of learning from all of the people I worked with. It was a very powerful time.
That would be massive. And then how did you put this together? I know your main kind of keynote is the Prosperity Triad.
Mm,
Kind of walk us through this process of putting all this information together. Like you're starting to study psychology on top of all your wellness and Eastern experience. Where did this kind of start to connect and turn into
mhm.
something?
So I started writing a book basically from the moment I came back. I had ideas, I was writing them down, but I didn't know how to write a book. It was just a collection of gibberish. So it sat as a weird manifesto for a number of years. And then I started kind of organizing it a bit more and I started thinking, okay, what is it that I'm mostly getting hired for? What does it seem that people are wanting? At this point in my career, I was starting to get established as an expert on emotional intelligence. I had done a lot of work in communication, nonviolent communication, different styles of communication and tools. So, emotional intelligence, communication. And then, of course, I had my stress reduction and wellness background. And so often, what I was noticing is you'd go in, you'd give a powerful workshop or a keynote. People would be jazzed for jazzed. How old am I? People would be so psyched for the first little while. And then you go back to your regular habits. And I started looking at this like, okay, well, what's happening here? And I discovered that a big part of the problem, and I put out some surveys with some of my past clients, is we are looking at things too siloed. We look at emotional
Right.
intelligence like, yes, if we're leaders, we recognize that we need to be emotionally intelligent leaders so that we can empathize with our clients and with our employees, and we can lead from a place of passion and receive 360 feedback and all of this stuff. But then it would just be there, and then they wouldn't take that into their communication. Or I'd get hired for a communication workshop and they'd say, don't mention emotional intelligence because we don't want people to think that we don't see them as intelligent. And then wellness was never like brought into the picture at all unless it was a specific wellness day that they would just do their wellness talk, but they wouldn't tie it into why wellness was important for leadership.
Right.
So the prosperity triad came out of there. I wanted to redefine what it actually meant to be prosperous. And, if we go back to the original Latin definition, it's so much more. Like money is not in that word. It is, the accomplishment of these aims and goals and having sustainable success. Well, the only way I see it possible to have sustainable success is you need these three things. You need to have your emotional intelligence. You need to be able to be in a place where you can reach self actualization. That was something that Carl Rogers from person-centered therapy really talked about the innate drive to be self-actualized. But you can't do that when you're in a sympathetic state. You can't do that when you're fight flight. Well, if you need space, you got to set those boundaries. That comes from being able to communicate your boundaries effectively and then have your wellness practice from those boundaries you created from a place of restoration. You can work on your emotional intelligence. And this 3-point feedback loop, honestly, as far as I'm concerned, is the answer to any kind of success you're trying to accomplish, whether that is relationship oriented, being able to check in with yourself, see what's going on in your personal life, or as a leader. This is what I now work with people when I go in and do, coaching and workshops in the C-suite level. They're recognizing, oh, we can't just memorize acronyms anymore. We actually need to put work into ourselves.
Right.
And that's how you become a successful, prosperous leader.
Yeah. No, I love these terms like integrating emotional intelligence, effective communication, and self-restoration. And if you think about these, it does kind of match up with Eastern philosophies. In a Western clinical, very research-based system, is that these terms we're hyper-focused on. But if we zoom out a little bit here and we look at it, most of it, once again, is from within ourselves so that we can interact with the outside world. And if we look at how the brain and nervous system works, there's two parts of the input that comes into the brain and nervous system. There's receptors that register the outside world, and there's receptors that register the inside world. And so much of it, and we see this go haywire in all sorts of different conditions, from autism to concussions, is that when things get damaged, that integration, that processing between us versus everything around us gets mangled. And the thing is, in business and in life, we're doing that damage to ourselves. That integration of us versus outside world becomes skewed, messed up, and we can't function our own body. And then everything that we're trying to get in our career falls apart as well. How would you put that with the practices in your wellness to make the system stronger? Because from anything from damage gives us a lesson on how to develop peak performance. So we've been in this state, okay, burnout, restoration, rinse and repeat, and continue on. But if we were actually to develop a practice from what we've learned from falling apart, how would we build that? Like, what aspects? Where do we start? How simply,
Simply,
where do we integrate us so that we don't lose the outside world and don't fall behind, but actually prosper and function at a different level?
Yeah. Super good questions, and such a good summarization also of that, like, integration, the inside and the outside. In Gestalt therapy, they call that contact boundary disruption or disturbances,
Right.
where
Yeah.
I'm contacting the outside world in a way that's incongruent. My real self is not meeting the self on the outside. And it is one of those things, right? Like, people have this idea. This is why I changed it from, in the triad, calling it wellness or mindfulness or anything, to self-restoration, because I do think we need to simplify it. We have to take away this idea that the only way that wellness is going to be successful, or taking care of yourself is going to be successful, is if we can somehow find a magic 30 minutes in our day where we're going to go to a yoga class, or, get in a meditation, or do some of this stuff. And, I talk about meditating for up to 8 hours in a day, and I'll be the first one to tell you, you don't need to do that. It's
Right.
not practical. It's not practical.
No.
In that stage in my life, sure. But what I try to teach people now is how to be more efficient with our mindfulness. And mindfulness, really, if we just simplify the definition, is being in the present moment. So
Okay.
this means right? That often it's associated with being non-judgmental, and there's correlations with mindfulness and happiness, but it's just because most of the time the present moment is actually pretty good. I talk about the phantom lions, right? Like we see these things that threaten us, but so few of the times are those things actually in the room with us. So we're safe, we're comfortable, we're able to be in more of a restorative state more often than we give ourselves credit for. So I try to teach people to just, one, cut out any time your mind goes to using the terms waiting, wasting time, killing time, any of that kind of language, because that's an opportunity for you to be in a restore state. Take those moments. You're
Ah,
standing in line at the coffee shop. Instead of thinking, oh, okay, I got to get to this next meeting, I got to do this thing. If you are there already, have you taken care of what you have to? Are you in control of the situation? If you're going to be late for a meeting, did you send that message out? If you've taken care of what you can and you need to be there anyway, be there. Stop this doom scrolling that we do. Sure, we need technology sometimes, it helps us, but don't be afraid to be in the moment. Just take a look around and actually like smell the coffee in the air. Be there. If you're at a red light, you're stopped, you're there anyway, check in with your body. Am I scrunching my shoulders up? Can I relax? So it's not about trying to find a magic 30 minutes for you to do your practice. It's about finding 10 to 15 seconds frequently throughout the
right.
day for you to check in, take a breath, be present, find the things that you're doing in automatic pilot that you can bring back. One little exercise, again, I try to leave with a lot of the clients I work with is I call it resisting the itch. So I have a hypnotherapy background as well. So
Okay.
oftentimes I'll do a little suggestion where I'll say, okay, so right now you're going to resist itching yourself for the next 30 seconds. And I want you to imagine that you're in a room and there's mosquitoes around you and they're buzzing and you can hear that sound in your ear. Or for some people, it's spiders are crawling over you or a fly is landing on, something that's going to make them feel an itch somewhere on their person. And then I just challenge them to not reactively scratch that itch. If you can notice it and then choose to respond every time you do even the smallest little exercise like that, you are strengthening pathways to your left prefrontal cortex that are going to allow you to be more rational, cognitive individuals, which is going to allow you to identify which are the real lions in your life, which are the phantom lions, which is going to allow you when you're up against stress to be able to cognitively look and say, does this need this kind of stress response? Because sometimes the mind, as you know, gets a little confused as to what's actually going to attack us. And it's just going to like sometimes, okay, cortisol, adrenaline, norepinephrine, let's just like flood it with everything because we don't know why there's panicking so much when the situation doesn't call for that. So these little
Exactly.
tiny things that we can do that we integrate into our life, it's not a fad diet. It's not something that, I'm going to, again, just do whenever I'm in this spot in my yoga room with my scented candles and all this. It's things that you're working into your everyday life over time can make huge changes. I'm sure you see this, right? Like, what are physical things that people can do that if they just were to do a little bit of it every single day, periodically, would make huge changes? I'm sure you have your whole laundry list of things that you would
Oh,
tell people.
yeah. Absolutely. And I like how you were describing kind of that preparation the mind does and fires down to the body and creates a response. And that seems to be where a lot of kind of uh, the performance aspects are popularized.
Mm.
And then you asked about the physical things. And you've experienced this with your practices, with martial arts, with with meditation, is that it's a bottom up now. It's the body going up to the brain and changing how the brain's firing versus the brain firing down with thoughts to prep the body for the lying or the situation that doesn't need a huge response. And that is the essence of how the brain actually develops and the nervous system develops. And
Mm.
if I just put it simply in 3 steps, how the brain and nervous system works from a beetle up to a dog, up to a
Mm.
human,
Mm-hmm.
the way every nervous system and brain works is input. Input comes in from sensors in our body, receptors,
Mm-hmm.
from the outside world, from our inside world. And then they come together and they're processed. And then there's an output. And that output is, well, the brain only sends signals down to the body to two different areas, muscles and glands. Mm-hmm. So you mentioned that crunching of the shoulders. Yeah, we see this in people. Like, that's how the brain and nervous system works. And then glands. Oh, well, the brain then fires down to the adrenal glands. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and every other organ in the body, every blood vessel, and it can get worn out. So if we're once again taking that principle of, okay, well, how do we get things from this bad state into a peak performance state? Yeah, it is all these exercises of fluid movements, breathing, which is a movement, all of these things that you've mentioned in your wellness practice and your martial arts experience. And even like if I scoped out your Instagram, you juggling. like juggling is a huge sensory activity. It's difficult, but it starts to build those quick reactions in the brain and nervous system. Like it's a beautiful thing. Mm-hmm. So on top of this, what are kind of your daily practices? And when we say practice, you gave a great explanation of why you call it a practice. I'll let you go.
Yeah, and I think that's it, right? Like, it is a practice because you don't get to a certain point. You're like, okay, good, I can check it off now. My wellness is good for the rest of my life, right? You have to kind of keep doing things. So for me, music is a huge conduit into relaxing all parts of me. So in my apartment, I just have a wall of instruments. And I walk up and like, okay, what day is it today? Is it a trumpet day? Am I feeling like a trumpet? I have drums, I have flutes, and I've studied instruments from around the world as well. So those also bring me back in a time and a place where I can feel my body relaxing. So I make sure I work that in. Even when I'm on the go, I have harmonicas on me always. Like, I always have an instrument. And instruments, music's really powerful for me. And then I got into rock climbing after I realized martial arts was a little hard after my getting a little concussion at the end of one of my fights. I was like, this is maybe not where I want my physical practice to be. And so I got into rock climbing, and I found something so beautiful when you talk about the mind-body connection. When you're like 800 feet off the ground, and I have one of my favorite places was in Squamish, and I go in my happy place. If I'm doing a little meditative practice, that's my happy place. I'm 800 feet off the ground. I have a waterfall right beside me, the sun setting on my back. I have to be so present and so in tune to holding on to these tiny little holds where your whole life is being supported by this rope and another person that you're really relying on. And you just hone in. So I make that a part of my practice. I do stay physical. So working out, trying to find all that. And then all those practices I told you, I'm an instigator of the unconscious, especially for myself. When I find little habits, little tics, things that I'm doing, I challenge it. I play. I feel like I have this playful back and forth with my unconscious mind. If a song comes into my head, and sometimes, like, I remember I was climbing one time on the wall, and the song came into my head, when I find myself in times of trouble, Mother Mare, and I just started laughing, and the person below me is like, what are you doing? Like, my unconscious mind is clearly scared right now, and it sends that signal through in song now. And I just love that I get to have this relationship with my mind. So that's all part of it. Smelling the coffee, being present when you're biting a sandwich. I love sandwiches when you have layers of food and you can actually taste every little part of that rather than just scarfing your food down. So eating is a big meditation for me. Cooking is a meditation for me. It's about taking tasks that I'm already doing all day and turning it into a practice. And that simply is just by bringing my presence there. It's saying everything else is okay right now. I'm going to be in my cooking. I'm going to be in my music making. I'm going to be in this lineup right now with these people. And that's really what the practice has been. I very seldom, maybe, once a week, will actually just sit down with a dedicated meditation. The rest of it is just turning what I'm already doing into one.
Right. Now, if you were to go back in time and compare yourself to that 20-year-old who was working 80 hours a week, where is your productivity at then versus now?
Wow.
With all
Um,
this activity you're doing, where's productivity at though?
I mean, it's through the roof. It's
Nice.
night and day, right? Like I can again viscerally feel that I was terrible at my doing and terrible at my being at that time of my life. When I was trying to relax, I was never fully relaxing because part of my mind was thinking, "Oh man, I wasn't productive yesterday. I wasn't productive during the day. What could I have done better?" So I wasn't fully relaxing. And then meanwhile, because I wasn't fully relaxing when it was time to get to work, I wasn't fully working because, oh man, I'm so tired. And the pandemic was actually really useful for me because I got to totally create my own schedule. And I experimented with one day on, one day off fully. And that was okay, today is a full being day. It's just fun. I played video games. I went out hiking and I told myself I didn't have to think of work at all. And I was able to do that because I knew tomorrow I was going to have a productive day. And then when it was time to do, I was so productive. Even if it was a task I hated doing my taxes. Even if it was
Right.
a task I hated doing, I knew I can get through it because tomorrow is a rest day and I'm going to have so much fun. So I could push myself a little bit harder. And now my life doesn't allow me to have one day on, one day off like it did back then. But I've taken that same model and realized productivity skyrockets when you are fully in your doing and then you also are fully in your being. We just need to take out all that muddy in between, and our productivity goes through the roof.
Right. Now you walk people through this in your coaching practice and your speaking. And I know there's people that they're like, okay, I resonate with Jason here and I want to hear more. Uh, how do they find you?
Well, like you said, through the coaching, through the speaking, this is how I try to reach big audiences. I do have the book, The Prosperity Triad, that you mentioned, and I'm really excited about my new book that I'm working on right now that I'm hoping to have released by the end of this year called Communicate Bravely. And
Excellent.
this model is really what I'm passionate about when it comes to confronting those things, like being brave to confront the things that aren't working for us. And a lot of the times, like I talked about, setting those boundaries and having those hard conversations, it really comes down to what we're not doing with the people between us. So we have the books. Anyone can always find me on at my website, www.jasonmspeaks.com. You can book some consultation, find me for keynotes, find me for coaching. I'm so passionate coming out of the back end of that burnout to try to help people. And I tell my wife, it's really selfish. I'm actually just a selfish person because I just want to live in a world where people are lighter, happier. They're living their best lives because it'll allow me to just walk in and be playfully exercising and
Right.
being with people. But it is something that I love. So if people are liking what they hear, let's have a conversation about it.
Absolutely. And that love and passion behind your work really comes out and resonates. So people definitely check out Jason. And of course, well, stay tuned to the next episode of The Hardy Brain, the show that takes athletic, introverted entrepreneurs and leaders and transforms them into ironclad brain performers. Take care.